Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tommy and welcome to another one of my tips videos. This time we are going to focus on the aesthetics, as if there ever was a time when we weren't focusing on that, to make sure that our enclosures don't look like a stampede of diplodocus just swept right over them. Well, unless you're going for that particular diplodocus stampede look. Not to be confused with the stegosaurus stampede scenery, which is another thing completely. Focus, Tommy. This video will focus on tips and ideas that will neatly tie your enclosure aesthetics in a coherent way. Don't want to have that one giant tree blocking the view, right? So let's get right to it then. Tip number 1. Instead of fences, create rock walls. I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm gonna be as honest as I can be. Is placing countless amounts of rocks instead of using fences morbidly boring and excruciating? Yes. Is the final result totally worth it? Also yes. Whenever I create a rock wall in the game, I wish that the mechanics would work similarly to Prehistoric Kingdom, where you can just copy and paste them as you wish, instead of having to place every single one of them manually. But it looks so much more natural than the concrete wall or endless wires around the perimeter. The best thing that you can do is lower the entire enclosure so that you can then place rocks all around it and it does not obstruct the view from the path around it. If you have been with this channel for a while now, you know that I like to ignore the rules of the game for the sake of aesthetics and usually don't care about the viewing galleries if the guests can actually see the dinosaur from the sidewalk. They're only blind in the game, not in my logic. If you haven't been with the channel, hello and welcome. I hope that you like what you see and that I'll be seeing you here again for more tips, tricks, and building tutorials. Tip number 2. Connect multiple enclosures with a river. This tip is more of an idea that I utilized in my Jurassic Egypt series, where I joined multiple sections of the park with rivers and streams. This creates the effect of your parks being built around natural settings rather than being engineered in an artificial manner. The same goes for connecting multiple enclosures or parts of your parks with lakes. What's a very nice trick to do is dip the invisible fence into the water to make it at least somewhat truly invisible. Yes, the bone that I had to pick with the invisible fence not being actually visible is still there. Speaking of fences, remember to combine this particular idea with tip number 1 and use a rock wall as your barrier in the river. We don't want to look at those hideous crooked fences, do we? If you want to know why crooked fences are just terrible, make sure to watch my video detailing 10 don'ts of the Jurassic World Evolution 2 Sandbox, or any other of my videos for that matter. I don't think there is one where I wouldn't highlight the importance of even fences. If you know me, you know that I won't have any crooked fences over here. No. This is the moment that I realized that I did mind the crooked fences. The fence is crooked. The crooked fence alert!
Everybody stay calm! What's the procedure, everyone?
Yeah, you get the gist. Tip number 3. Use mountain ranges as natural barriers. Another tip encompassing multiple enclosures and creating a sense of building around nature rather than decimating it completely is about creating mountain ranges and then working around them. If you don't know how to create a mountain range, I also have a video on that and you can find it on my channel and I will link it in the description. This tip carries multiple pieces of advice. You can either create a mountain and have dinosaurs on both sides of it while having the guests look at both enclosures from the sides, or switch things around and create elevated positions for your guests on the mountain to look at the dinosaurs from up above. If you're going for option A, make sure to lower the part of the enclosure facing the mountain or leave a part of it flat in front of a viewing gallery so as not to obstruct the view with immediate height. Alternatively, create elevated positions for your guests around the enclosure. A mountain within an enclosure is also an option. But the most important thing when applying this tip is to make sure that no enclosure is entirely flat. Even the smallest enclosures should have at least some height difference unless you're going completely flat on purpose. You can go flat when creating a savanna or a beach, for example. Tip number 4, use vegetation, textures, and rocks properly. This tip actually contains many small tips in it. Initially I wanted to make a 10 tips video, but then decided that some of these are just small details and could be all thrown into one singular category. So what do I mean by using vegetation, textures, and rocks properly? Well, I got a few notes. The first one, use climate appropriate vegetation and rocks. A problem that I sometimes see in people's enclosures and parks that bugs me a little bit is, for example, using plants that look exotic in the alpine environment. Yes, I'm speaking about cycads and seed plants that I usually only use in warmer climate maps or in aviaries, since it is believable that they could have their own enclosed biome. Speaking of vegetation, always make sure to add it where it belongs. What I mean by this is, try to think about the natural placement of plants, which is usually around rocks, because the dinosaurs cannot stomp over them, and also have secluded parts of the forest further away from the viewing area so as not to obstruct the view. And what is most important, and completely ticks off my OCD controls, is don't ever leave any vegetation dipped in the water. The only exception to this is creating a swamp. Other than that, it's a crime against a nice enclosure to see shrubs just happily basking in the water. They have no business being there. The water's edge should also be distinguished with a different texture. The best textures for the water's edge are rock, sand, or dirt, according to what aesthetic you're going for or which biome you're currently in. Always make sure to paint the tops of the hills and mountains with the rock texture and then break it down with some shrubs that automatically mix in some grass. For lakes, you can distinguish the depth of the water with darker textures and mix them with sand around the edges. The tropical biome is the best for this. Also, don't be afraid to mix textures to bring about new and unique combinations. You'd be surprised what a slight mix of two textures can do. While on the topic of textures, make sure to use corresponding rocks to the textures you're using. It does not make any sense to use red rocks on a black rock texture, for example. And lastly, make sure to place your rocks in clusters to get the natural feeling of rock formation slowly withering over time. Last but not least, tip number 5, mind the size of the enclosure with respect to the size of the dinosaurs. A detail, you might think, but it's another thing that always bugs me, and it's the discrepancies between the size of the enclosure and the actual size of the dinosaurs in that enclosure, but also between the sizes of different species of dinosaurs within one particular enclosure. I said the word enclosure too many times. I always apply the homalocephaly rule in every enclosure I build, which is if the dinosaur is too small, it does not need a large enclosure, but also does not need concrete fences and does not need a viewing gallery. If the dinosaurs are smaller than planters, use planters and other decoration as barriers, since it is quite ridiculous to have fences and viewing galleries for those, let's be honest. The opposite of this is the Brachiosaurus rule. Don't be afraid to create large enclosures no matter how much space they take up. The most important thing, however, is not to overcrowd an enclosure or mix two kinds of dinosaurs that are of two very different sizes. We want to go for the natural way of things and simulate a real-life Jurassic environment, or Cretaceous one for that matter. You wouldn't have a tiny Huayangosaurus just waltzing around the Triceratops that could just sit on it while not paying attention. I just imagine a trike walking around with a Huayangosaurus stuck to his ass. Pretty sure the guests wouldn't like to see that. Or would they? I imagine that would be quite funny. Anyway, I'm rambling and that should be my cue to wrap things up. Thank you for watching this video, ladies and gentlemen. I do hope that it provided some much needed inspiration for you to get back into building after your YouTube procrastination window comes to a close, and that you'll be able to use these tips to your benefit. If you like the video, please leave a like or a comment, or share it with your friends or family, or anyone who you suspect might be a dino nerd basically. Who knows, maybe your grandma's one of us paleontology lovers. If you think that you will like my upcoming content, please do consider subscribing to the channel because there is much more coming. Thank you again for watching. My name is Tommy and I hope I'll see you here next time. But till the next time, have the greatest of the days and bye-bye. I hope that you will I hope that you like what you see and that you'll here again for more after your YouTube back into building after your YouTube